All right, guys, so now we want to be able to search for users based on what we enter in our search form. So with the GitHub API, we can make a request to the endpoints of search users, and then we can add a parameter of Q, which is the query string that we want to search for, and that would be whatever we put in the input field. All right, so the way that we want to do this, I mean, we could put it in our search component, but I want to have everything centralized in our app.js. Okay, so what we have to do is pass up this value. We have to pass this up to the main app component through props. So the way that we can do that is in our search, instead of console logging this right here, let's say this dot props dot, and then we're going to have a function, and we're going to call that search users. So we'll say search users, and we're going to pass in our state dot text. Okay, and then I just want to clear the form after, so we can then just this dot set state. So we're just setting our component text to nothing. Now, this doesn't exist right now, so what we can do, let's save this, and since we're calling this prop search users, we can add it as a prop right here where we actually embed the search. Okay, so instead of sending a prop down, we're actually sending a prop up. And this is the problem with not using something like context or Redux, is you can start to get, 3-4 levels deep, and it's called prop drilling. You're sending things up and down through props, and it gets kind of messy, and you're going to see that. But then later on, I'm going to show you how we can fix it. I just think it's important for you to know how this stuff works. So let's add, we called it search users. So we want to give this a prop of search users, and we're going to set this to a method within this component, this app component called search users. So we'll say this dot search users. All right, and then we're going to create that function right here. So we'll say search users, and this should fire off. And since we passed in this dot state dot text, let's go right here, and let's say that this search user should take in text, and then let's just do a console log to make sure that this is actually firing off, and it'll actually log the text. Okay, so let's go back to our search component and put something in here and search, and there we go, we get a console log. So just to reiterate, once we submit this form, okay, it's calling on submit in the search component, and then we're calling a prop, a function in the props called search users, and passing in the text. In our app.js, we set the prop here to call this dot search users in the app.js, and that's what's going on right here. Let's put a comment here. We'll just say search GitHub users. All right, now we want to make a call to that endpoint that I showed you, which is slash search slash users, and then we can add the query, which is going to be very similar to what we did up here. And I'm going to use a sync await, so let's add a sync here. Now, since this is an arrow function, what we do is we add a sync right here before the parameter rather than before the actual function like we did up here. Okay, and then what I'll do is copy this. Let's actually copy all this and paste this in here. And the endpoint is different that we're going to do with the search. We actually want to do slash search slash users, and then we want to put a Q equals, and then whatever the text. Okay, and the text is being passed in, and then we'll just put an ampersand here to continue on with the rest of the parameters. Okay, now with this endpoint, the response is going to be in res.data.items. Okay, it's not going to be res.data because there's other things like stuff that has to do with pagination and stuff like that. So instead of setting users to res.data, we're going to set it to dot items, data dot items. And same thing with loading, we're just going to keep that at false. All right, now since we're doing this, I don't even want to fetch the original users. There's no reason to do that. So I'm just going to comment that out for now. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So let's save this and let's go to our app, and we no longer see any users because nothing's getting called in that component did mount. Now it should only get called when we submit this form. So let's just search for Brad, and there we go. So it's hitting that endpoint, that /search/users with the query of Brad, because that's what we added in here. And it's giving us all the results for that. Okay, and some of these, well, they all say Brad in the username and the login, but it will also search, if we go to like the GitHub page, it'll also search the bio, I believe. Okay, so, I mean, if you want to keep the initial users there that we have in the component did mount, so if you want to keep that request, those will show at first, and then once we go ahead and click search, it'll send out the request, we'll get the response, and then it will change the user state to the actual search users, like that. All right, but I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to get rid of this whole thing here. All right, so now we actually have search functionality, and hopefully you understand how this is working. I'm just going to reiterate once again. Once we submit this, it calls the props.searchUsers. We're basically catching that here and saying when that fires, call this .searchUsers, which is this function here, and then we're making a request. We're setting our state to the users that come back to be this res.data.items, and loading is false. Oh, one thing we didn't do is set loading to true right here before we actually make the request. So let's say set state, and let's say set loading to true, like that. That way we should get that spinner. So let's try it out. Okay, so you can see it, we got that little spinner for a second when we did our search. Now one last thing we should do is add the search users as a prop type, because we now have this props.searchUsers. So I'm going to just import prop types, and let's go right here and say static prop types, and we have search users, and this is a function, so I'm going to do ptfr, which is prop types function. All right, just to make the code a little more robust, I just want to make sure we add all the correct prop types. Now in the next video, I want to make it so that we can have a clear button, because once we search for some users here, I want to be able to clear them out. You know, we can keep searching, like if we say Pete, it'll give us a bunch of results, but I want a clear button that will just completely take everything out of the user's part of the state. Okay, so that's what we'll work on next.